Get us zoomed in all nice so we can answer your questions and projections. All right, we will zoom out just a little bit. Let's do that. Here we go. All right, so we're going to start with quarterbacks as always. It has Lamar Jackson as the top rated quarterback. I have no problems with that. Same thing with Josh Allen. I mean, hopefully, this is a great game to start off the season. Jalen Hurts already played. He had a very good game. Now, Jaden Daniels, I will tell you, I am very excited to see how Washington is this year and how they handle, some of the changes, especially with Jaden Daniels having, new running backs, things like that, that might be featured. Moving on, I think the first real thing to question would be Bo Nix in Tennessee, because Tennessee actually had a pretty decent last year defense. But I think with the upgrade at the skilled positions and another year in the system, I think you definitely need to start Bo Nix. Same thing with Kyler Murray. I think he is a start in all formats that you are playing, whether it's daily or regular fantasy football, because, well, Kyler Murray looks like he should have another good season after a couple down, and he's playing New Orleans. On to Trevor Lawrence. If you watch our regular start and sit videos, you would know that I am really high on Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to show why he was considered a generational talent, especially with the upgrades they made. And they are playing Carolina. If you have questions, please just ask. On to Drake May. Drake May, this is a very interesting game. Let's see what it looks like. And I'm also going to be curious how he does in passing game, because they brought in Diggs and stuff, but I'm just curious how he starts developing as a passer. Brock Purdy, I actually said that he is a sit for me this week between so many of just the wide receivers being hurt, injured, Jennings sitting out. I'm really just kind of not big on Brock Purdy for this first week. Jordan Love, I love him. Detroit secondary is still beat up, but they should be able to get a little more pressure. But I think he is an easy start. I would actually have him rated up here closer to the top 10, just telling you the way I feel. Justin Herbert had a great game. He defied, what people thought. They thought it was just going to be ground and pound, but they showed they could pass the ball. On to Justin Fields. I know people are kind of wondering what he's going to do. I think from a fantasy perspective, he's definitely someone he can play because he's shown he can always run. On to Caleb Williams. This is a big season. My personal feeling about Caleb Williams is, I've said this before, is that Caleb Williams is a bust. The reason why I have said that is because if you look, he pouts and just does not do well when his teams get down. On to one of the biggest questions, which is Jared Goff. What will he do? How will he do? He still has all of his weapons and everything like that. He knows the system. Him and his coach know what works. So honestly, I'm not expecting as big of a drop off as people are expecting from Jared Goff this season. I would have him in the top 15, definitely above Justin Fields. And I mean, we saw what Dak did, but even before that, I would have had him up there. Now, Green Bay. Their strength right now should be their pass rusher and linebackers. Jair Alexander, remember, they let him go. So our secondary, because I am a Packers fan, so your first time watching this, our secondary is not the greatest right now. The back half with the safeties, they're better, but definitely do not like the corners so far. CJ Stroud. I'm going to tell you, to me, this is a make or break year for him psychologically, and I hope that they figured out how to protect him, because CJ Stroud, the way he got sacked last year, and they downgraded the offensive line, I feel bad for him. This is a guy that I'm telling people to pick up, put on your bench, stash. If you do not know, for the last few weeks of the season, Bryce Young was actually QB1, and that is before they upgraded his wide receiver position and brought in other positions around to help him. So to me, Bryce Young is someone that I am definitely putting on my bench if I have room. On to JJ McCarthy, I think is a wait and see. Tua Tagovailoa, we forget that just last year going into the season, the hype around him in Miami, they still have the coach. They still have the wide receivers. I actually have Tua around player 15. For the rest of them, I think it's mainly a wait and see. If you're in a super flex, All right, I'm going to say Daniel Jones. I'd actually be kind of interested if you had to start him. Same thing with Penix. Here we go on to Flacco, someone that really should be a question for super flex. Cincinnati's D has been terrible, and we know Flacco can at least sling it. Now, you might have to live with 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, but he will push for over 300 yards. Again, this is super flex. Matthew Stafford, I think the main concern is just the injuries. Yes, Houston's D is much better, but it's that back questionable. So I actually would start Stafford on super flex. Now we start getting into ones that I have real questions about if you're in super flexes. Of this group, the only one I would consider is Russell potentially. The rest of them I'm going to do wait and sees, and that's just my opinion on the quarterback. So let's quickly now move on to the running backs. All right. Starting with Bijan. Bijan, Tampa Bay. I think there's no question to be had there. Same thing with Derrick Henry. Gibbs, I think, will be interesting. We need to see what it is like, the rotation. Obviously, Gibbs is the more explosive, but him and Montgomery just seeing what it is like, since they lost their offensive coordinator. I personally also think maybe it's a rough day for the Detroit running backs because, again, the Packers' strength is going to be the trenches at front line and their linebackers. Moving on, Jonathan Taylor. I have high hopes for Jonathan Taylor. Daniel Jones should only help him. And because it's not Anthony Richardson, he should get the goal line work. Here's the big question. It does look like McCaffrey will be playing, but they're probably going to limit him. They brought in Brian Robinson, and I think they're going to limit him a little bit. I mean, you have to start McCaffrey, but it is worried. So I would say if you can go out and get Brian Robinson or Garendo, I would have them on your bench, especially if McCaffrey does get really injured. Bucky Irvin, I think, is an easy start. Josh Jacobs, this is another one that's an easy start. Where I think you start getting into some of the questions is Achane. I will tell you, if you do not know this, while Tua was healthy, Achane was the top scoring running back in fantasy football, so I think it is an easy start, which leads us down to James Conner. The reason why I'm saying we're going to talk about James Conner a little bit is because it looks like they might actually lean into trying to save him for the playoffs and being a little bit more of a timeshare. He is 30 years old. I know it's one of those, when will it change? With Conner, people have been writing him off, but they did draft a running back last year that looked promising. So I am expecting the splits to be a little bit more 60-40, maybe even 50-50. On to Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is an easy start. The main issue with Kenneth Walker has always been health. So if you have him, that's all you really got to watch out for is Walker being healthy. Chuba Hubbard, the guy has shown he is a starting running back. They went out and got Rico, but I think you have nothing to worry about, especially against Jacksonville. Now, on to James Cook. James Cook, if you take away the touchdowns last year, was more like an RB2. And if you do not know this, Ray Davis, all he needs is 10 touches, and he gives you double-digit points. He is way more electric, and if Buffalo gets behind, I expect them to feature a little bit more of Ray Davis because of the juice. I would just have James Cook a little bit lower in my rankings, but obviously you drafted him, and he is a start. This is where I start getting into some of the real questions, and I'm talking about for the future, but also right now. Kamara has shown the last few years he wears down. I do think with Kellen Moore, they're going to trick it up, and he will be the main part of their offense. So for the first few weeks, I have no problems with Kamara, but if you are an owner of Kamara, I would look to dump him after week 3 or 4, especially if he starts off hot. Murray Hampton had the game, not as great as we had hoped, but it was a first game for a rookie. On to Tony Pollard. This is a one that I have a lot of concerns about, and I will tell you why. Denver has a great defense, and the other reason why I am concerned is because Pollard has lost some of that explosiveness, and if Denver starts to run away, the game script will change. Pollard can catch, but I would actually have Pollard right here in the 25 range. That's me personally. On to Henderson. Henderson, I love going into the draft. Obviously, obviously the Patriots are loving him, and the Raiders defense is poo-poo, so I have no problems. I'd actually bump him up a little bit. On to Breece Hall. Brees Hall is someone who I think is severely underrated. If he has a bad game this week against Pittsburgh, but it shows he is healthy and you kind of see the splits and it shows that Brees Hall is a feature back, I think you should try to trade for him. I know all the hype around the other running back, and rightfully so, because he was a bruiser in Wisconsin. But I think Brees Hall, if he has a down game, I think it is right for you to buy Brees Hall because the fact that I still think he has a lot of juice. And the other thing about Brees Hall is he's 24. If you go into a lot of detail and data, running backs have their best season at age 24. On to Swift. Swift is someone who I am fading hard in most drafts. I think you start him this week against Minnesota. But again, if he does well, I think you dump him because it shows that over a season, he does not do that well. Aaron Jones, I think he is right where he should be. They brought in Mason, but I think Aaron Jones still will be the guy that gets what's called 55 to 60% of the snaps. So I have no worries about him, and I would actually have him closer to in the top 20 for this game. Montgomery, we talked about Gibbs early. I will tell you, Montgomery is very scary to start until you see exactly what they plan on doing. All right. They brought in, well, they didn't bring in, they lost their offensive coordinator. The Packers' strength is in their trenches and linebackers. So it will be interesting to see if the Packers pull away. It will be Gibbs because they'll be needing to pass. Tyrone Tracy, another one that is really interesting. I think you start him this week, but Washington did have a very much improved defense, and people need to keep that in mind of how well Washington finished and they went to the championship. I think Tyrone Tracy is a more explosive back, but keep in mind, Scatterboo, if he's vulturing those touchdowns, just keep that in mind before this week. I have no problem. This is one that I want to talk about. Harvey Dobbins. I personally think Dobbins should be up here, maybe in Tony Pollard's spot, and I'll tell you why. They brought in him. All the reports in camp as soon as he came in said that they love this guy, and I think he's going to get 60+% of the work. If they're pulling away, they might work in RJ Harvey a little bit more, but I'm expecting Dobbins to be the workhorse. So I have no problem starting him, especially in flex positions. And like I said, I have him more at RB19. That leads me to RJ Harvey. I have Harvey more down here in the Jordan Mason questionable range because I think he will be more in the 30 to 40 range of the snaps he gets. All right, on to Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren has shown he's kind of like Pollard. He is explosive, but they need to limit his snaps. For that reason, I think last year they learned that they could wear down Warren, and that makes him not as effective for what they want to do. So same thing, I'd kind of have Warren under this group up here and have him, again, more in this range. On to Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, I actually really like. I want to see how it shakes out, but there's a reason why he was a first-round pick. All right, I'm expecting them to honestly run him into the ground and see what they have. They have the guy who made Bucky Irving very relevant. He's more explosive and has more talent than Bucky Irving. For that reason, if you need to in your flex position or if it's super deep league, I am starting Travis Etienne, and that's before we're even talking about the Carolina defense. So if I'm you, I am starting Etienne and seeing what they have. Like I said, same guy that did wonders for Tanks Bigsby, I think will do wonders for Etienne. Mason, I'm going to say I'm probably leaving him on my bench because Aaron Jones starts off healthy and explosive. So that's where I'm at with this. On to the Houston Texans. My honest opinion is I'm not touching anyone in that backfield. All right. I just don't know who it's going to be, what it's going to be. And Chubb is old. He had his second major injury, and I truly don't know the explosiveness. And that's before we even talk about Houston's O-line, which is terrible. On to Jerome Ford. I think it's going to be Samson, but for the first week, Ford is probably going to be the one that gets the most run, and Cincinnati's defense, since it's going to be a track meet, I think that's where you kind of get a little bit more Ford and his explosiveness. Yes, I know Samson is super explosive. I think he'll get reps until his fumbling problems from college creep up. On to Eckler. This is my opinion, season outlook for it. Eckler should start off pretty hot. I know they got Bill, and if you saw, Chris Rodriguez is not playing in this game, which further bumps up Eckler and Bill. All right, my opinion on Eckler is he's the main guy the first few weeks, but like what we talked about with Kamara, I am going to try to trade Eckler after week 3, 4. After I think I've gotten all the juice out of him, I will move on, and that is what I recommend for you guys too. On Javonte Williams, I know the game's over. I just want to quickly talk about it. He actually looked decent. I get it. Carter wasn't there. I really want to see what they did against that tough front four, but he looked decent, and maybe it just took a year or two for him to come back. So if he's out there on the waiver wires, I would definitely be looking on that. Ramondre Stevenson, in my opinion, you are only starting him in the deepest of leagues that you have to, if not leave him on the bench. Same thing with Zach Charbonnet. Moving on to the guy we were talking about, Bill. I'm very curious what it's going to be like for week 1. I do think it's Eckler. I could even see up to 80% Eckler, but what I will say is that do not be shocked if it's closer to 60%, but the way I'm kind of reading the tea leaves is that Eckler should be 80%. Now, if it is a game where it's a blowout, that's where I think you get the value from Bill. On to Samson, the guy I talked about. I think him and Ford will be neck and neck in this game. They both are explosive, and if it is a track meet, you're going to need both of them out there to try to keep up with Cincinnati. Remember, the main issue with Samson is he has huge fumble problems. So as long as he fixes that, he should be featured a lot. Even with Judd finally signing, I still think Simpson is the superior talent. On to Caleb Johnson. I honestly think it is one of those wait and see. He seems to be in the doghouse a little bit. So, like I said, I think it will be Warren, but I think they're going to try and keep Warren a little more explosive. On to Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is the guy that everyone's kind of fallen in love with. They talked him up a lot, but Breece Hall is more explosive. Breece Hall is 24. Now, for those that didn't know, Allen came into the league very young at 20, and this year he's starting at 21. But I think it's one of those where Allen will be more in the cooler months where they're using him to pound. And for the first few weeks, I think it will be a little bit more 70-30 split. On to Trey Benson, talked about him. I think that he will get bumped up this year. I think, honestly, I have him closer to this range so you can start him in deep leagues because of the fact that they did spend a decent draft pick and they will try to keep Connor fresh. Okay, it is one of those where Connor always loses a couple of games. It is the last year of his contract, so I think they'll try to see what they have in Benson. Moving on, Ollie Gordon, I think it's more change of pace. I really am not too concerned about him cutting into Achane. Rashard White, I do see him maybe getting 30% of the work. So I think in super deep leagues, you can possibly start Rashard White. Brian Robinson is one of those guys that I think, again, kind of in that Jerome Ford tier. I'd have him more towards the top 30 because of the fact that they brought him in. They really like him, but he does not know these systems. So that's going forward. I think in this game, if there's an injury, it is Guerendo, and Guerendo is just so explosive. The only other person that I would even begin to talk about here is Ray Davis. If you do not know, I have a huge crush on Ray Davis. All he needs is 8 to 10 touches to get you double digits. If they're needing to pop and stuff like that, I expect Ray Davis to get those 8 to 10 touches. So again, in deep leagues or someone where you're behind there and just needing someone with a lot of pop and upside, that would be Ray Davis. If you're hoping for a vulture just to fall down and get you 2 touchdowns, that does seem to be the Scatterboo role. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I think it's only in the super deep leagues. Moving on to the wide receiver position. Ja'Marr Chase, there's no reason to ask a question. All right, same thing with Jefferson, Nico Collins, CeeDee Lamb. All right, people were hating on him for those drops. Those were tough catches, okay? I am a Cowboy hater, but CeeDee had a pretty good game, and those catches were super hard. On to Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going to be curious how he works with Trevor this season, but I personally love Brian Thomas Jr. Malik Neighbors, same thing, no worries. Drake London was explosive with Penix. This is where you have your first kind of concern, and it's not for this week. It is for the future because Stafford's back is already acting up. Hopefully it does not cause him to miss games. But for week 1, I have no problems with Puka. All right. AJ Brown, it crept up what we saw last year, which is a little worrying, where he kind of had weeks where he disappeared. So keep an eye on, kind of what goes on with AJ Brown. Mike Evans, I think everyone's waiting to see when Father Time catches up to him. But with Godwin out and it being early in the season, I personally have no problem starting Mike Evans. Amon Ra, I know people are worried, but don't be worried, okay? Even with Parsons going to my Green Bay Packers, I still think Amon Ra is easily a top 10 wide receiver for the season. All right, Lad McConkey got touch on it a little bit. If you saw, Keenan Allen was as relevant as ever. Quentin Johnson might be having that year 3 breakout. He actually reminds me a lot of Davante Adams from what I saw in that game. If you do not remember, Davante Adams had some bad hands coming into the league, and he fixed them, and now he's Davante Adams, which makes me worry about Lad McConkey. So I'm going to say I kind of have the arrow pointing down, but we need to talk about this week's games. T. Higgins, all right? I think, again, this game's going to try to be a shootout because Flacco can sling it, all right? And what I mean by that, Flacco might give you 400 yards, but probably over 3 for this game. 4 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, but he's going to sling it, which is going to make this game a track meet. All right, on to Tyreek Hill. Of the Miami wide receivers, Tyreek is the one that I am most worried about because Father Time comes for us all, and Tyreek's game is built on speed, and it looks like he lost a step. Now, the whole team is healthy, and with Tua, I am very interested because going in last season, the hype was real on Miami. If you watch earlier in this live stream, I did talk up Tua because I think he should have a decent game. On to Jackson Smith-Njigba. I really like him. Yep, go Pack, go, definitely. Thank you for the high. All right, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he is the number 1. I have no problem starting him. Davante Adams, kind of like I talked about with Puka, I think the concern becomes whenever Stafford gets hurt and that worry, but up until then, I think, just start both of them. On to Marvin Harrison Jr., all right? Marvin Harrison Jr. is a post-hype sleeper for me. I usually don't buy into it, but if you take away the rookies from last year and just look at normal, Marvin Harrison Jr. had a pretty good rookie season. All right, if you do not know what I mean by that, by historical norms, it was a good rookie season. The problem is so many of you last year, hopefully you watched DGL and you faded him like we told you, but because of the hype, because of the Mans and everyone else hyping him up, you drafted him at his ceiling, okay? Anytime you draft someone at their ceiling, you run the risk of them disappointing you. This year, he fell in drafts. I think he will go over 1,000 yards. I think he will get you same touchdowns he had last year. So I have no problems with Marvin Harrison Jr. Terry McLaurin, I also have no problems with, even missing camp and stuff, because him and Daniels have a good report. This is someone who I hyped up all off season. Courtland Sutton, man, even him at 20, I will tell you the truth. I have Courtland Sutton more around this range, okay? And I'll tell you why. He showed that him and Bo Nix have chemistry. He showed that he is a TD monster. I view him right now in the same range as Davante Adams and higher, as one of those guys that's going to get you yards and touchdowns. So I actually drafted him in a lot of leagues a round or 2 early because I think he is going to be a solid wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. On to Ted McMillan, with them trading away his security blanket, young security blanket. They let him go back to Minnesota. I think that only helps Tech. The other concern I have, but he is banged up, is Coker. All right, so with that, I think Ted McMillan is going to be the guy. Who should I start? McMillan or Jerry Jeudy? Very, very, very good question. Honestly, for this week, I am going Jerry Jeudy because of, like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout, and I think Jerry Jeudy does well with someone who can sling the ball. Ted McMillan, I do like him, but out of those two, I actually have him lower than Jerry Jeudy in my ranking. So that is who I would start. I expect the yards to be there for Jeudy, maybe not the touchdowns. On Jameson Williams against the Green Bay Packers, his game is built on defense, and the Packers secondary is weak except for the safety position. I expect them to hone in on keeping Jameson from taking the top off the defense. Moving on, to the Buffalo Bills. I have no problems with Zay Flowers, but as I will talk about a little bit later, I actually like Bateman quite a bit because the last few weeks he was the number one wide receiver. So if you can stash Bateman and see how it does, but Zay Flowers, I would start him if I had to. I would have him below Judy. I would actually have Zay Flowers more in this range down here. But again, if you need to start him, I don't have too many concerns. I will get to DJ Moore, who I do have some concerns about. Last year, he did not crack 1,000 receiving yards. The targets were there. It might be one of those situations where maybe just him and Caleb Williams are not on the same page. I do expect Odunze to be the number one guy and take that jump forward. So of the two, Odunze is who I'm more bullish about. We did talk about Jerry Jeudy, a quickly highlight. I actually have Jeudy higher, closer to the top 20 because I expect this game to be a shootout. Even with Cincinnati winning, I do expect Cleveland to sling the ball. And if anything, if you have learned, it is Flacco can still sling it. All right, he might give you 4 interceptions, but he should sling it. Who to start? Zay Flowers or Tyreek Hill? I mean, it is Tyreek Hill. All right. I get the question because of Tyreek Hill last year, but just remember he was a top 5 pick last season and they are healthy to start the season. So I think for week 1, you put your trust in Tyreek Hill. Thank you for the question. All right, Garrett Wilson, he is someone that has shown he can deliver. It is more low-end wide receiver too, but he delivers no matter who the quarterback is. So in this range, I have no problem with Garrett Wilson. On to DK Metcalf. Rodgers is going to pepper the crap out of him. I think you need to keep an eye on Roman Wilson because he has better hands, and that is my concern with DK Metcalf, with Aaron Rodgers being a Packers guy. And I can tell you that Rodgers hates people with dropsies, so hopefully DK does not drop the ball. All right, next question. Start PPR. We have Sutton. All right, Abuka, Jameson, worried Broncos jump ahead early and get run heavy. Completely understand that. Completely do. But it is week 1, and I think even with that, they're going to leave their team out there because this game, they need to see how it all fits. So I think Sutton, no problem starting it. Abuka and Jameson is where it gets much, much, much more interesting. Everything out of camp sounds like Abuka is number 2, which means that he should have that coveted role in that great Bucs offense if it's the same as last season. So I would go Abuka. My only concern with Jameson is how they look in that new offense. I think the talent is there. He showed it last year, but his game is predicated over getting over the top, and the Packers do have really good safeties. So of the two, I would lean a little bit more towards Abuka. Jameson, if he does catch a 70-yard bomb, I do apologize, but at this moment, I'm going to say Sutton and Abuka. Thoughts on Evans? I said Evans, I do not love for much for the season outlook, especially when Godwin comes back and they're fully healthy. But for week 1, I have no problems with Evans. He still showed that he can deliver. And again, with him being the clear number 1 start the season, I think that's an easy start. Let's see here. That's what you're exactly. I'm glad I helped you with that, James. All right, George Pickens. I just want to talk about a little bit. I have concerns Dallas going forward. Not going to spend too much time, but the reason why is Dallas's O-line. I have huge concerns. And for that reason, I was high on CD and Ferguson because Pickens' game, you got to be able to get it to him deep. So that's my thoughts on that. We talked about Abuka. I told you I like him, especially as number 2. I think he is definitely a consideration for flex, or if you are in super deep leagues, it's a start with no questions. Who should I start, McMillan or Drake London? Honestly, it is Drake London. There's not really a question about that. You've asked a few. I get it. Your heart really wants to start McMillan, but all right, London is the guy. With Penix, he has top 5 upside all day. So to me, London's an easy start. Jalen Waddle. I do like him. Again as a flex. Again, talking about last season when they were healthy, Waddle and all of them were being drafted in the top 6 rounds. And I get it, one season, we all have terrible memories in fantasy football. But to start the season, I have no problems with that. This is where I get a little concerned. Calvin Ridley. I think he will put up numbers throughout the season. But with Denver's defense, with Denver's secondary, I expect them to hold Ridley to a modest game. Under Ricky Pearsall, honestly, I do like Jennings longer throughout the whole seasons. They did take Pearsall in the first round, so I have no problem starting him in deeper leagues. But if you do not have to start him, I would not start Pearsall. Debo Samuels, it's really going to be interesting how they kind of have him as a gadget. I would honestly leave him on my bench to wait and see. This leads me to Travis Hunter. I get it, the explosiveness is there, but Shohei Ohtani is his closest comp. But if we're going with football, usually when players play two sides, they do not do that great. All right, Charles Woodson ended up focusing on defense. All right, Deion Sanders is probably the closest. And even with Deion, having watched him in my childhood, they very limited him on offense. I know most scouts were higher on Travis Hunter as a cornerback. I think Travis Hunter really wanted to do a role to show he could. But I honestly, I'm not going to be that heavy into him. That's just my gut instinct. Rome Odunze, I talked about. I like Rome Odunze. I think he is going to show that he is the number one. I will keep making Packers comparisons because, well, I am a Packers fan, but Rome Odunze, again, kind of gives me those Devontae Adam vibes. Big, strong, great at catching the ball at the high point. I love Rome Odunze going into the season, and I honestly have no problems starting him this week, especially in your flex. On to Chris Olave. Honestly, I have all sorts of concerns. Can Spencer Rattler get him the ball? Arizona's defense is much better. I get it. He has shown that he is the number one there, but I honestly, if I don't have to start Olave, I am not. On to Matthew Golden. I think he is ranked right, and this is where I'm going to quickly talk about the Packers with him being the first one. I think I'm going to start Reed if I had to start any of them just to see. Matthew Golden does have better hands than Xavier Worthy. It'll be interesting to see, but if I do not have to start him, I'm not going to start him. But I know a lot of people overdrafted Golden, so if he is in that position where you need to start him, I would only do it as a flex or deep play. All right, Higgins or Debo? Great question. It's going to be interesting. I think Debo, honestly, age and injuries have kind of caught up to him because of the role they had. I'm starting Higgins, even though I have Higgins lower. To me, Higgins is closer to that 20 to 25 range, but I do have him solidly above Debo. And the reason why is because that game looks like it is going to be a shootout. So that's where I go with that. Who should I start? Justin Jefferson or Malik Neighbors? Holy mo! If you got both of those, obviously it must be some sort of dynasty. From the questions you asked above, I'm starting both of them. I mean, there's no way I am not starting both of them. I mean, if you're making me pick of the two, oh my goodness. Justin Jefferson. I mean, it's Justin Jefferson. I don't know, but of the two, I'm starting both of those. If you're in a position where you're thinking about not starting Justin Jefferson or Malik Neighbors, bless you in that team, because, man. And you have Jamar Chase. What league? My goodness. Okay, so from the question, sorry, guy, and that one, no problem. Glad I could help you. All right, I'm starting Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase. Obviously, if you have flexes, I'm going with Jake, with London. You asked about Tariq Hill or Zay Flowers. Those are on my bench. You asked about Jerry Jeudy, McMillan. Those are on my bench. Of all the ones you asked, it honestly goes Chase, Jefferson, Neighbors, London. Then I'm starting Tariq Hill. And my goodness, if you need to start more, your team is just fruitful. My goodness. Okay. Anyways, back to this for all the people that are still waiting. Stephon Diggs. All right. I think he'll be a little slow to start. And if you remember the last 2 seasons, he has lost his juice and step. So I'm going to see how he does in real game speed. Jacoby Myers, to me, is someone that you start in deep leagues. He has shown that he is just so consistent for them. Juwan Jennings, I talked about it. I think season outlook, he is still the number 1. So again, into this area, Keenan Coleman, I think he will take a big step up this year. But Shakir is the guy that is consistent. If you're just looking for consistent points, like you do not need a boom or bust game, it is Shakir. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, we're getting into this area where it is very tough. All right. I will say I'm a little heavier on Josh Downs because of the explosiveness, but we really need to see what Daniel Jones is preferring. Is he preferring the deep shots, or is he preferring that security blanket? Of them both, I'm only starting them if I have to in a flex deep dynasty. Of this little group here, if I had to rank them, I'm probably going Downs. Then I'm probably going Coleman, Pittman, Shakir. Again, Shakir's just one of those super high floor guys. Rashard Bateman, I talked about it, and I think he is a good deep sleeper. If I could put him on my bench, I definitely would put him on my bench. And let's quickly try to go through this. I think there's no problems with starting Alan Thielen. I think there's no problems with starting Reed if you had to. Move Keenan Allen's up your rankings going in next week. Cooper Kupp definitely stuck. Let's get into yep, glad I could help you, Go Pack Go. Let's get in tight ends real quick. We have a few more minutes. All right. George Kittle, I think there's no questions. If you watch our video, this is controversial. I said that I'm sitting Brock Bowers. What I meant was more in daily. Obviously, if you drafted Brock Bowers, you are starting him. But Brock Bowers, for those that do not know, was pretty boomer bust last year. He had 7 bust games where he was outside the top 15 tight ends, okay? But my main concern is this. Pete Carroll has shown he does not like to feature tight ends, all right? Whenever he had a top tight end, he didn't quite know how to use him. And Geno Smith has also shown he doesn't look the way tight ends. I get it, Brock Bowers, but I do have a little fear that he might be Kyle Pittman. All right, Trey McBride to me is my tight end number 1 for this season. I have him over over Kittle and everyone else, so that is an easy start. Let's see here. My starts today are Nix, Gibbs, Henderson, McLaurin, Brian Thomas, Abuka, Bowers. I have Charbonnet, Sampson. All right, on the bench, do you think I have the... Yes, 100%. What we know right now, you have the right starters. The rest of them kind of questionable. Ridley, I see to get blanket, and Ricky Pearsall. I think it is to see how he develops a little bit more. But for this week, Ott, I think you're good. Onto this, Sam Laporta, I think he will have a decent game. But I honestly, the guy that in this group I'm more looking a little bit towards is Njoku, because again, with Flacco, he just thrived last year. So I would have Njoku in the top 5. Also, Tucker Kraft is someone I would look to highlight. He is a yak monster. All right. Ingram, someone else, he has shown that he is consistent, especially for young quarterbacks. I expect him to be in the top 10 all season long. Now, people that are moving down, all right, I am going to move down TJ Hawkinson until you see how he does with JJ. You really don't know, but we do know that the coach likes to feature Hawkinson, so I do think he'll be fine. I have him firmly in the top 12, but just saying I have him a little bit lower, all right? Ty Warren, I'm probably a little bit lower on most just because of the way it is with rookies, so I would rather start guys have already started. Jake Ferguson, as I said, year long. The other that I talk about here is Hunter Henry. I expect him to get you a touchdown this week, so I'd have him closer to top 10. All right, we have a couple more questions. Debo or Nick Chubb? Debo over Nick Chubb. I just don't see the explosiveness with Nick Chubb. Nix over May and McCarthy. Yes, that's exactly how I'm doing it. Bo Nix, because he can run, he can throw. Drake May, I'm going to be interested how he progresses as a passer. And JJ McCarthy, it is week 1. Week 1, and it's basically his rookie year, I like to see. But of those, Nixon, of the ones I think has the most upside, it is McCarthy. But for this week, go with Nix. Ott Debo. Yep, exactly. All right, let's see here, guys. Don Kincaid. Honestly, I'm not starting him if I have to. I would rather start a Zach Ertz. I want to highlight him for you. Zach Ertz is someone that should be in your top 15. He showed last year that he is a great security blanket for Jaden Daniels. Yep, glad that you felt the same. All right, on to anyone else to talk about. Jonnu Smith, I'm going to tell you I have some concerns. Last year was his first huge breakout, and I wish he stayed in Miami. If he stayed in Miami, he would be near the top 10. Anyone else to highlight for your guys if you are this deep? Tight end premium, 2 tight end leagues. Chiga, I think he's always there at the upside. I will say Dalton Schultz, he's kind of a reliable starter if you need spots on your bench because of the deepness of your league and you're waiting to see. I think Sanders is someone to hold and wait and see. But for that, I think that's kind of where we are at. All right, guys, the games are about to start. I hope all of you guys do really well. We will be streaming again for you guys next week. We always drop videos. We will have our starts and sits, and we will do our players to add off the waiver wire. Good luck to everyone, and let's have some great football games. Go Pack, go.